Learning the second Sikha on Chag HaShavuos in Chelek Chav Gimel on page 27. The shir today is being learned Lil Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rab Menashe Koltman. The Yontif von Shavuos is ausgeteilt von the andere de Golem. The Yontif of Shavuos is unique and different from the other Yomim Tovim. The mit was hakol moedim ba'atzeres to be'inon ami lechem. When it comes to the Yontif of Shavuos, everybody agrees, as we'll see in a moment. There's an argument about how one is supposed to celebrate and express his joy in the Yom Tov. When it comes to Shavuos, everybody agrees that the way to express it is by what it says in the pasuk lochem, that you physically, with eating and drinking, have to enjoy the Yom Tov. My timer, what's the reason that Shavuos stands out? Yom shenitna by Torah, because it's the day that Hashem gave Yidden the Torah. So what are we talking about over here? What is the halacha regarding other Yomim Tovim that we say that Shavuos is different in this sense? By the andere Yomim Tovim is farana plukte. When it comes to the other Yomim Tovim, there's an argument in the Gemara, and this is an argument based on the fact that there's one pasuk where it says Atzeres Lashem Alikecha, that the celebration is for Hashem, expressed by spiritual matters, and another pasuk it says Atzeres Tia Lachem, that the joy and the celebration of the Yom Tov should be expressed lachem in things that a person here physically enjoys, eating and drinking. So how do we resolve this contradiction of the two psukim? So the argument here is is it the pasuk here saying that a person has a choice. He can either celebrate Yom Tov being totally dedicated to spiritual matters, davening, learning for Hashem, or he has an option to sit and drink and enjoy a festive meal. Oder es muss sein chetzi lachem. Or there's no option. You have the two psukim, one says lachem and one says lashem. That's that a person should divide his day, that part of the day of Yom Tov should be dedicated to davening and learning for Hashem, and part of the day of Yom Tov should be dedicated to eating and drinking a festive meal for Yom Tov. So there's an argument. By Shavuos, but when it comes to Shavuos, in an ala moide de be'inon nami lachem. Everybody agrees that in addition to the time that you spend in davening and learning on Shavuos, you must also have time where you eat and drink and enjoy physically lachem in this Yom Tov. And here the Rebbe quotes the expression that Rashi says, that one should be joyous with eating and drinking, and the reason why Shavuos is different, laharais, to demonstrate, that he's satisfied and he's accepting this holy day, li Yisrael, for Yidden, shenitna Torah by, that Hashem gave us the Torah on this day. Now, this is all an explanation of how Shavuos is unique, because there's an opinion that in other Yom Tovim one could just spend this entire day learning and davening. But that's only according to one opinion, though. However, even according to the actual halacha, as by all Yom Tovim was that we follow the opinion even regarding all Yom Tovim, that you have to divide your day, half for Hashem in davening and learning, and half eating and drinking in physical enjoyment in the Yom Tov. Is nachalz farana chiluk from Shavuos legabi andere regalim. So you would think that according to this opinion, there's no difference between Shavuos and the other Yom Tovim. Just like every Yom Tov, you divide your day part for Hashem and part lachem. Shavuos as well, it also has to be nami lachem. So what's the difference? So there still always a difference, as it's brought in Shulchan Aruch and the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch as well. By Shar Yom Tovim v'Shabbosais, when it comes to every other Yom Tov or Shabbos as well, is the din. So there the halacha is as memek fasten ataynes chalim. One may fast if he had a bad dream and he wants to remove the bad effect of any decree that may be upon him because of this bad dream. So he fasts to atone, and he's allowed to fast on the Shabbos and Yom Tov. But Hamafal Pias is the chiyuv von Einik Shabbos and Yom Tov, because even though there's an obligation to express pleasure with Shabbos and Yom Tov, but because this person is very sad regarding his dream, in Cain, so this person has no appetite to eat. On the contrary, for him, fasting is his pleasure on this day. But this is not the din when it comes to Shavuos. One must eat and be joyous, to express to show that Yidden are satisfied and are accepting the Torah that Hashem gave on this day. The language Rashi says, Torminate fasten can tainis cholim. So one may not fast for this purpose because he had a bad dream. Das heißt, so what this means is, as b'chag Shavuos is faran, that when it comes to the Yom Tov of Shavuos, what we have is nitnar de chiyuv von einig b'chlal. Not only the general obligation for one to express pleasure on this day. B'meile kan design durch einig von tainig cholim. So then if that's the case, if a person that has no appetite to eat, and for him the joy or the pleasure isn't the fast, so that could be expressed by fasting. Nor achiyav achila. When it comes to Shavuos, the obligation you have is specifically to eat. One must eat specifically in order to express that this day is the greatness of the day, that he accepts the Torah that Hashem gave on this day. And Flogis says Adova Tumua. So seemingly this is something which is very difficult to understand. The other Yomim Tovim of Pesach and Sukkot, what do they come to commemorate? Primarily, the Eibishter's kindness with us that was in physical things. The Chedus from Shibud Mitzrayim Pesach. In Pesach, we are celebrating the freedom of the Shibud, of the subjugation of the Mitzrayim. On Besukis, Hoyshavti es B'nei Yisrael, B'tziyah Yisrael Meretz Mitzrayim. And then on Sukkot, celebrating the fact that Hashem placed us in Sukkot, which means the Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory, Sheikifam Behem, Letzeh, Lebal Yaakov Sherev V'Shemesh. That Eden was surrounded with these clouds for the protection from the heat and the sun. So these are both primarily physical things that Hashem provided for Eden. Und von deswegen, nevertheless, kann bei sie sein a Fall, wenn sie Chiyuv Einig wird ausgeführt, nicht durch Chassude Gashmis. There can be a case that the expression of the joy of the Yom Tov or the pleasure of the Yom Tov is not in a physical meal, nor verkehrt durch Hatainis. On the contrary, this person, for him, the joy, the pleasure is in the fast. Und dat kabei Chag Shavuos, specifically when it comes to the Yom Tov of Shavuos. Yom shenitna by Torah, the day that Hashem gives Eden the Torah, was is in ganzen an inyan von Chesed Ruchni, which is completely a spiritual kindness of Hashem. Muss einig v'simchas Yom Tov sein allemal verbunden dafke mit achille gashmis. Here, the pleasure, the joy of this Yom Tov, always, without any exception, must be expressed specifically with physically eating. Umitar defanet fasten a tainis cholam, and therefore one may not fast the fast, even in a case of a dream where he has no appetite to eat at all, and he's fasting because of the dream. Umahai time gufa, and the reason why he may not fast is because of this reason itself. As is nitna by Torah. The giving of the Torah is the reason why that it has to be expressed specifically with eating. How could this be? If the whole inyan of Matan Torah is an inyan ruchni, how is that expressed specifically by eating begashmias? And the other Yom Tovim, where it's a inyan gashmi that the Eibishter provided and gave his kindness to Yidden, there it doesn't necessarily have to be with achila gashmis. There's a case where it could be even beruchnis. So the Rabbi will give us a long and deep analysis to understand B'chlal, what is the inyan of Simchas Yom Tov on Shabbos and Yom Tov in general, and then we'll see how this applies in a much more powerful way regarding Shavuos. To verstehen das, to understand how and why Yom Tov Shavuos is unique. Darf man früher beweisen dem klolesigen Geder von Chiyuv Einig Shabbos Yom Tov. We first must explain and define better the obligation of simcha that there is on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Or pleasure, rather. Einig is pleasure, simcha, sometimes they're different, or they go together. The Einig of Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Ikke Chiyuv Einig b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov is dafke b'achilo shtiyah. Even on Shabbos and Yom Tov, although we mentioned before that one may fast by a tainis cholim, but nevertheless, the primary way to express the joy of einig, of pleasure on Shabbos and Yom Tov, is by eating a meal, achilo shtiyah. Was the far is the din, so therefore the halacha is, as afal piyaz memek fast na tainis cholim b'Shabbos and Yom Tov kanal, that even though one is allowed to fast for a dream, even on Shabbos and Yom Tov, as mentioned before, von deswegen, but nevertheless, der was hat gefast, one that did fast, darf noch dem fasten oi tainis b'choil she yiskapelei. He later on during the week has to fast yet again in order to atone for the fact that he fasted on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Weil mit sein Taines Cholem, because the fact that he fasted for his dream on Shabbos or Yontif, Bittul Ikir Einik Shabbos. He nullified the primary way to fulfill the obligation of having pleasure on Shabbos. So we see that the main obligation of Simcha or Einig on Shabbos and Yontif is with eating and drinking. Furthermore, the hette to fasten b'Shabbos v'Yontif is nor ba'Taines Cholem. This permission that one has to fast on Shabbos and Yontif is only if you're fasting for such a situation when a person has a bad dream and he wants to atone for this, to remove a decree upon him. Or in a situation where, for one, eating is literally painful for him. But if there's a fast where the Ayid wants to fast on Shabbos and Yontif for a different reason, even for a very good and holy reason, because he wants to do tshuva and this is part of his pious behavior. And he does have pleasure in the fact that he's fasting. Is Oster, nevertheless, this is forbidden. One may not exchange the way Chachamim described what the pleasure should be on Shabbos and Yontif, which is with eating 3 meals, with a different kind of pleasure that does not have to be today. It could be on a different day where a person will have that pleasure of his tshuva or chassidus. So here we see that in addition to what we saw in the beginning regarding Shavuos, that Shavuos, there's no exceptions to the fact that the joy of the Yontif, the pleasure of the Yontif has to be expressed in eating and drinking. But even on Shabbos and Yontif, where there is an exception, but nevertheless, the primary way to express the joy or pleasure of Shabbos and Yontif is with eating and drinking. So regarding Shabbos and Yontif, the question is, wie bald as the din einig is nit achile kishalatzma. Since the halacha we're discussing here is the pleasure that one should express on Shabbos and Yontif. So it's not the act of eating in itself that's the obligation here. No blois to leave the meinik shabbat. The eating is the expression of the pleasure of the Shabbos and Yontif. Mitzvahs Shudas Shabbos eine ela b'shv'loinik. To quote Alter Rebbe, the mitzvah of the meals of Shabbos is just for the pleasure of Shabbos that it expresses. Biz as der einig Shabbos v'yomtiv wird verrechnet via mitzvah, was es tluye b'das adam. To the point that this mitzvah of expressing pleasure on Shabbos and Yontif is considered to be a mitzvah which it depends on the individual. It depends on the person. Wie bald me meg fast na taines cholim mishum da taines einig, as understood from the fact that we mentioned before that one may fast for a dream, and the reason is because for him, this individual, it is a pleasure. So we see that the main point here is to express pleasure on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and it's an individual thing for every person what his pleasure is. If so, the question is, so why did Chazal institute and design the pleasure that it should primarily be expressed by eating and drinking? And one may not exchange the pleasure that Chachamim designed and required with one's own personal pleasure that he may say for him is better and different. Seemingly, there should be no condition and nothing set for everybody. No yedere, so mekayim sein mitzvahs einig mit dem, was is sich der vom Messianik. The einig, the pleasure of Shabbos, should be fulfilled for everybody individually. Whatever is considered to be pleasure for him. Pleasure is a very personal thing. It's a feeling. It's a sense that of pleasure that every person has. What causes him pleasure? So why a Chazal describing and defining that it has to be dafke or primarily with achil u'shtia, eating and drinking? Now, one may answer and say, look, the fact is that tainuk von roiv b'nei adam is von achil u'shtia, achil is basar u'shtia is yayin. The pleasure of most people is in eating and drinking, which is eating meat specifically and drinking wine, which it says regarding Yom Tov, Shabbos and Yom Tov. So therefore, maybe we could say Chachamim decided to choose this as the primary way to express the Einik Shabbos is because this is what they go according to the majority, and for most people, this is what it is. However, this is not enough of an answer because das is a beklal nit machriach. This at all does not in any way say that the same applies as by miut is an ander ofen von teinig. That by the the minority, that it doesn't at all force us to say, as by me it is an ander Eifen von Teinig, so by say nit tasten kann. That for that minority, any other mode of pleasure should not be considered to be a pleasure for them. And just going back here to the parentheses, those individuals that their pleasure is fasting for the sake of tshuva. That's for them the greatest pleasure. So the fact that for the majority it's one way, but we're not talking over here about something that's based on the existence of the klal, of the tzibur. This is a very individual mitzvah for every yachid. So the fact that 90% enjoy one thing, that doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that for these 10%, that is not at all a pleasure or enjoyment. So therefore, we should allow for this person to lichatchila express his joy and eineg with his tshuva, with his fasting on his level. Is the beer in them? So the explanation for this, why Chazal said that the ikir, einig, for everybody, for all the Klal Yisrael, is dafke and achille shtiyah. Teiro mitzvahs sind gegeben geworden zu Yidden, wie sie seine Neshamas begufim. Hashem gives us the Teiro mitzvahs here, as we are in this world, souls in a body. Dafke, specifically. Was av ve'ein yesh lechem, to use the expression of the Gemara, when Moshe Rabbeinu was having a conversation with the Malachim about giving the Teiro here, specifically to our world, that the Malachim have no father and mother, and a human being has a father and mother. So when it says in Aseres Adibris, Kaved esavicha ve'esimecha, that applies only to human beings here in this world of flesh and blood that have a father and mother. On the tam thereof is, and the reason why Torah mitzvahs are given for a human being here in this physical world, weil the tikkun, was mitzvahs tun eufen der Menschen, because what is the accomplishment that mitzvahs are here for, Kamaim Razal, as we see in the expression that it says in the Medrash, Loi nitnu mitzvahs ela litzaref bemes abrius. That Hashem gives us mitzvahs only for one reason, in order to refine and transform the creations, the people, the physical body here in this world. And it's nitzalib the neshama la'atzma. So this is not for the sake of the neshama itself. The neshama itself does not descend into this world to rectify itself, to correct something, or to refine itself. The neshama above is in a holy, pure place. Not to leave them guf. The letzaref, the refinement, is to refine the body. As euch der guf von a Yidden, that even the physical body of a Yid soll werden tzaruf und durchgenommen mit kedushas ha-mitzvahs. The physical body itself, with its nature that it has, whatever the physical body is, it should be completely permeated and elevated with the holiness of a mitzvah. So von is verstandig, so from this we understand, as das was Torah sagt dann, so this that the Torah tells us, as Shabbos or the Yom Tov darf sein as man von einig bei Yidden. Lachem, that Shabbos and Yom Tov is a time when one should experience pleasure. Lachem, for you, who's the you over here? Meint es, nit, as nor the neshama soll haben a teinig ruchni von Yom HaShabbos wie Yom Tov. What this means is that the pleasure of Shabbos should be experienced not only by the neshama, which is naturally sensitive to the einig of the Shabbos, nor as euch der Guf soll fehlen an einig davon, was das ist Yom HaShabbos Yom Tov. But even the physical body should also experience the pleasure of the fact that today is Shabbos, and that holiness of Shabbos should be experienced by the Guf according to the terms of the Guf, according to what the nature of the Guf is that it enjoys. Rabbi, on the contrary, the ikar ha-mechovim von der mitzvah is dafke der letzar of dem Guf. This is the main focus of the mitzvah, the fact that not only we're reaching the body as well, in addition to the neshama, but no, the main point is the fact that it's the physical body that's expressing joy or pleasure in eating and drinking on this day because of the holiness of the day of Shabbos. Vibal, das der Tainuk Tivi von Agov is von Achilu Shtiyeh. So now, therefore, we can understand that since the natural pleasure of the body is eating and drinking, the rib is zaktaire, so therefore the Torah says, as chiyuv v'einig is durch achille davke, that the obligation of pleasure that has to be expressed from the day of Shabbos is specifically by eating and drinking. Weil davke b'oifen zeh wird getan, as der einig Shabbos is mitzaref nem durch dem guf mamish, because it's only through this that the pleasure of Shabbos is penetrating the nature of the physical body. If one experiences the pleasure of the fact that it's such a holy day and his neshama is sensitive to that, and his neshama is so joyous and in such pleasure of the holiness of Shabbos, and he brings along the body to enjoy the pleasure of the neshama on the terms of the neshama, with the nature of the neshama. But the body in itself, of who it is in its nature, has not experienced that joy on its terms, in its nature of eating and drinking. So the main point is that the teva of the guf in its world, of what it is, should eat and drink to bring down and to experience the joy of Shabbos in the world and in the what defines the guf, the teva of the guf. Now, which is not the case. This cannot be accomplished when a person fasts, for example, for tshuva. This is not something which is a pleasure for the body. It's a spiritual pleasure for the soul. Als sein Guf soll nicht fühlen kein Zar von dem Taines, and even if he is in such a level that he's so involved in the tshuva of his neshama that the fact that his body is abstaining from eating is not at all any pain for him, so it's pure pleasure, or the nachme. Or even if it's a person that is on a level higher than this. Euch der Guf fehlt a gewissen Einig davon, was der Neshama hat teinet. Even the physical body itself is experiencing some level of pleasure of the Neshama that's doing tshuva. His body is so refined that his body could also experience some level of pleasure that the Neshama experiences when it does tshuva. And as an example for this, a person can be hearing something, not eating, but hearing, which is a more spiritual sense, and that good news that a person hears can cause a person's bone to literally expand. So it's not only the physical eating that affects the physical body, but sometimes even something spiritual that a person experiences has a physical effect on his physical body as well. So if so, you may argue a person that's on such a level, if the point there is to elevate and reach the guf, but for him, the tshuva on his level with his neshama, the guf itself experiences that pleasure. However, that's not enough. Is doch das aber nit kein einiger guf mitzadatzmai. You're not yet reaching the actual body itself for what it is with its own nature. Soll sich misanig sein von Ashmua, that the physical body itself, in its nature, should be deriving pleasure of this good news, other from a tainus, or to derive pleasure from the fast itself. Rather, what's happening is no mitzad shlita beteva. Rather, because of the very big power and control of the neshama that's so forceful and so powerful, whether by nature or through the person's aveda, from the neshama of his soul, oifen guf. So therefore, it has such a tremendous power on the physical body, heipech teva guf. And therefore, this is something which is not the nature of the guf. It's not the nature of the guf to expand by spiritual good news. But the excitement of the person in the good news, or here in the case of the person that's doing tshuva, which is so involved in his tshuva, it's so intense that it even affects the body against its nature, and that's even if it's a very refined and holy body, but nevertheless, what's happening here is not that the very body itself, in its nature, is being included in this, or is involved in this. It's the body which is becoming controlled and being elevated by the intensity of the soul. But over here, though, the point is that the body itself, in its nature, mamish, in its world, should express the joy of Shabbos and Yom Tov. Und der Rebbe, Tommy Shabbos and Yom Tov, nicht fasten as that tainus. So therefore, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, one may not fast such a fast. Shall tshuva, even for tshuva, b'chayetze b'zeh, anything similar. Even if he has pleasure in this fast, and even to the degree as the Rabbi described there before, one must express the pleasure of Shabbos, specifically with eating and drinking, because the eating and the drinking is actually the pleasure of the body in its nature for what it is. And therefore, is there din afila by tainis cholim b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov. So the halach is, even if someone is fasting for a bad dream that he had on Shabbos and Yom Tov, even though Chazal did allow this, and as this will be explained at length in the next sifir, why that is, as medarf avdem akapara. But nevertheless, the person needs an atonement for the fact that he fasted on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Hayes mahad durchdem mevatel gewen ikir einik Shabbos. Because the primary Einik Shabbos which is that the guf should experience the einig of Shabbos on its terms and its nature, that was not fulfilled. So therefore one has to atone for that. So this is the explanation for every Shabbos and Yom Tov. What's the point of this mitzvah of einig and simcha on Shabbos and Yom Tov, including Shavuos, where we see that the Torah wants that the physical body itself should experience the joy of Shabbos and Yom Tov. So now here, the Rabbi will focus on explaining the fact that on Shabbos and Yom Tov, on a regular Shabbos and Yom Tov, when a person is fasting for a dream, that's an exception where one is allowed to fast. Now based on what we explained there, we can say, as das is euch der Tam al derech haremes of them, that this is the reason, at least as a hint, we can explain this, was hagam as in Shulchan Aruch werden gebracht. Even though if you look in Shulchan Aruch, so it's brought there in Sugab zu Tainis Cholim, in addition to the case of a person fasting for a bad dream, noch fallen, wenn es ist da, hätte nicht zu fasten, nicht zu essen, that is, oder zu fasten b'Shabbos. There are other cases where a person may fast or just refrain from eating on Shabbos and Yom Tov, because this is his pleasure. What are the other examples? By an Adam sha'achila mazekes loy, a person that's eating is something which is harmful for him. So for him it's a pleasure that he should not eat. Other ein of us is eingewohnt zu fasten b'chol yom, one that's accustomed to fasting every single day of the week. So for this individual to fast on Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's painful because of the change of his behavior. His body can't handle the food. So there are other examples of times when it's permitted for one not to eat on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Von deswegen, but nevertheless, wird in Shas der Mond befeirish, bloß der Heter von Tainis Cholim. Which one of these heterim is mentioned in the Gemara, at least explicitly? It's only the permission for one to fast in a case where he has a dream that he wants to fast for. So was the fun is verstandig, so from this we'll understand, as the Yesod heter, from the andere Fallen, what is the basis of the permission that's given in not only the case of the Tainis Cholim, but in all cases when one may fast even on Shabbos and Yom Tov, is the din from Tainis Cholim. The basis is the din of the fact that he can fast when he had a bad dream. From then, lernt men up, it's from this case with the dream, we can learn as mitzvahs, einig Shabbos v'Yom Tov, is nit ken chiyuv achila farzich. From this we understand that the mitzvah here is not the very eating in itself, not to leave them einig Shabbat. The point here is the pleasure that you derive of the eating. Und der Rebbe, wenn der Adam ist sich mestanik von nicht essen, so that's the basis of the heter, that when one has pleasure of not eating, mag man fasten. One is allowed to eat. So the basis of this heter, though, comes specifically from the case of the Tainis Cholim. What's the pshat in this? What's the reason for this? So here really the point that the Rebbe is going to be explaining is that on one hand we say that the main purpose and the ikir of the einig is specifically with eating and drinking, to reach the physical body. So even though the point is not the act of eating in itself, but the einig should be expressed dafke according to the nature of the body because it has to reach the body. But on the other hand, there is a situation where the person's body can't handle that. He's not a keli for this. This pleasure of Shabbos and Yom Tov will not be able to reach his body. So then the Torah deals with this and allows the person to express his pleasure, not including his body. That's the basis of the heter here. And this heter, this condition that a person's body is not a keli to receive and experience in its nature the joy of Shabbos and Yom Tov, is expressed specifically and uniquely by a person that had a bad dream that shows that he is not a keli to take into his physical body this joy of Shabbos and Yom Tov. So what is it about this dream that we're talking about here? So we can say, al derech haremes, as der Tam was Chazal haben Beiche gewinnt zu sagen dem Hette, dafke bei Tainis Cholim. Why is it Chazal choose specifically to say the Hette by a case when a person is fasting for a dream? Kedei de mitzum merame sein. So this is to hint the following. As the mitzias a Hette von Tainis b'Shabbos, me'eze tam shiyeh, the very fact that a person finds himself in a situation where he requires this Hette not to eat on Shabbos and Yom Tov, amatze was is meineya ayiden milisanig b'achilo u'shtiyah. A person finds himself to be in a condition that he has to hold back of, or he can't bring the joy or the pleasure of Shabbos and Yom Tov to be experienced by his physical body. So this really means that the person is in a low state. He's not able to bring the joy of the holiness of Shabbos into his physical body. What is this a result of? Nehmt sich davon, was mir in a matzev von cholem ruchni. This is because the person finds himself in this low state of being in a spiritual dream. Shina vehelem v'golus, in a state of sleep and concealment and exile, from the neshama beguf, where the neshama is in the body, and the body is so dominant to the point that the person cannot experience the joy of Shabbos and Yontiv in his body. Und noch mehr, additionally, von Shine v'hesta agolus kepshutai, being in the state of sleep and concealment of physical golus, in the literal sense, being in golus. What is the nature of sleep and a dream in golus that one experiences that doesn't allow him to bring the joy of Shabbos and Yontiv in his body? So this is something that the Alter Rebbe explains in Torah Oyer from Pasuk Hayinu K'cholem, that the Pasuk describes that when Yidden in Golus, they say that we're like in a dream. As punkt v'acholem is mechabe shnei hafchim b'nei sechot. Just like it is in a dream where a person's imagination runs wild and he's able to dream of two opposites in the same time. And when a person is asleep, the intellect of the person is really not functioning. There's the power of imagination that's still active. The same is true with the condition of Yidden in the time of Golos, as to leave the Helen v'hesta from Golos, because of the concealment of godliness and the connection that he has in the time of Golos, is recht as bayim zoln zayin beis dvarim hofchim. It is possible that a person should experience opposites in his life. B'shas davenen steht men in atnur von erseiderus amitis. When a person davens, the person is with a tremendous inspiration, and this is real, it's genuine, and with good resolutions. But then when he walks away from that experience after his davening, soll das vergessen werden, a person may completely forget of this experience, ad kedei kach, to the point as kann sich führen heipich von dem, was hat machel gewähnt, b'shas tefillah, that the person can then go and behave the exact opposite of what his inspiration and resolution was at the time of his davening. That's the kind of concealment that's hinted in the condition of a dream. So here, applying this to a Shabbos and Yontif, where the Torah says, bring down that holiness of Shabbos and Yontif to be experienced within the nature of your body. That's why the Iker of the Shabbos and Yontif is with eating and drinking. So here, varum, because vi is shayich by Yidden azazah. How is it possible that this should be by a Yid? As in talk from Shabbos or the Yontif, on a holy day like Shabbos and Yontif, was is a mitzvah, la'angai ba'chilu shtir. So this day has the mitzvah to give the pleasure in a manner of eating and drinking, that his body should experience this. Soll sein Guf in meinea sein von dem Tainug. But his body says, no, I can't, I have no appetite, I can't eat, it's painful for me, I'm depressed, I can't eat. How is it possible that a Yid comes to such a state where he has no appetite to bring in the holiness of Shabbos and Yom Tov in the nature of his body? And the Rebbe adds, our question here is, we're not talking about an individual that is rebelling and looking to walk away from what the Torah says, God forbid. We're speaking of an individual that's making an effort to follow what the Torah says. Und von deswegen ist sein Guf nicht maßen zu mekabel sein Otemeine. But nevertheless, there's something that's stopping him, something that's holding him back. It's sort of out of his control. There's a bad dream, it's harmful for his body, and his body cannot experience this holiness of Shabbos and Yontif. So how does this happen? What is this a result of? Is this not the far was said is an agmaim with a matzah von cholem? That is because this person finds himself in a place, in the condition of a dream. Hester agolus. It's a result of the concealment of golus. Er ist taka Yid, was führt sich alpi Teire. Yes, he's a Yid that's following Teire. Aber zusammen damit ist da a Hester, was the lust nicht, als der Einig HaShabbos soll ihm durchnehmen. But nevertheless, there's a concealment here, there's a certain blockage that doesn't allow the holiness of Shabbos to penetrate him. Bis als sein Guf soll der Herr in Kedeboy as a Shabbos, that even his physical body should sense the fact that today is Shabbos and I have to eat cholent, I have to enjoy, I have to express the joy of Shabbos in my physical body. There's something there that's blocking between the holiness of Shabbos and the person's physical body. Wenn bei ihm wollt Oster Hester nicht gewähnt, if for him he wouldn't have this level of concealment, this blockage, wollte vayikatsheu von dem Zman, so then the fact that we sanctify this day, this Shabbos or Yontiv, was das is the Yom HaShabbos or the Yontiv, this day of Shabbos and Yontiv, gepoilt of sein Guf. So then the Shabbos and Yom Tov has the effect on the body as well. As Heint, that today he should feel the pleasure of eating physical food. Even if he's a person that on the rest of the days of the week, he's on a level of a tzaddik and he doesn't eat, he fasts. But on the day of Shabbos and Yom Tov, his physical body should be a keli to the great holiness of the day of Shabbos. While Shabbos is a tog, was brengt tainug in alle inyanim, because Shabbos is a day that brings pleasure in every area. And the body of the person is not something that should prevent this. A person's avodah on Shabbos is not by bringing pain and suffering or fasting with the body, rather to bring the holiness of Shabbos into the physical body. That's really the point and the greatness of what Shabbos is about. So therefore, this person that can't experience this on this day of Shabbos, so there's a blockage, there's a separation between the Kedusha of the Shabbos and the physical nature of his body. So now here, what does the Torah tell such a person that's in such a low state? How does he deal with this? Since the Torah gives a person guidance and advice of how to deal with every situation, including a person that's found in this dream. There's two opposites. There's tremendous kedusha he has, but yet his physical body, on the other hand, is pulling in a whole different direction and it's holding him back of bringing that kedusha into his body. But Torah gives advice of what this person as well should do. As we see, the of Torah as ir pu'ule is lahavdul ben atome or ben atoyer, that the Torah teaches a person how to distinguish between what's impure and pure. What does this mean? That the Torah has to teach and show a person this. The l'chayre, seemingly, Tomi and Tar is an tzvei hafchem. Impurity and purity are clearly distinct and different. They're opposites. Why is it necessary for Torah? It says that the Torah comes and shows you to distinguish between what's pure and impure. No, rather, the point there is, because the guidance and the assistance of Torah is oich farazah, was is an amatze from shine v'cholim. It's even for an individual that's in a state and condition of sleep and dream. And therefore he can confuse what's pure and impure. The Torah comes down to his level. The Torah comes and tells him how to deal with this condition that he finds himself in when he's confused between what's pure and impure, and shows him how to separate between them. So here as well, regarding this individual that finds himself in a situation where he can't. He has no appetite. He can't bring the Kedusha of Shabbos into his physical body. So therefore the Torah gives him the heter and tells him how to deal with this. The Rebbe gibt Torah euch an Eitze zu dem, was zu lieben hester is ein Gof in meinea machilas Shabbos v'Yom Tov. So the Torah here gives advice for this individual where his physical body is preventing him of experiencing the joy or the pleasure of Shabbos and Yom Tov. He is in matet zu fasten. It allows this individual to fast. Bald, as in Zainit to Gematziv, is das sein tiny, because in the condition that he finds himself in, this is his pleasure, so the Torah says that he's allowed to express his pleasure in this manner. This is the explanation regarding every Shabbos and Yom Tov. So the point that we understand over here is that for every Shabbos and Yom Tov, Shavuos included, the main point of the mitzvah of Simcha or Einig of Shabbos and Yom Tov is for the physical body, to include and elevate the physical body and in its nature, on its level for who it is. But what do you do with a person that his body is not a keli for it? So here the Torah gives him a heter, and the Torah says, in your state, we can't reach you. Your body is not going to be a keli for this, so the Torah on a regular Shabbos and Yom Tov cannot reach and elevate his body. But he then will experience his Einik Shabbos in a different manner, only in a ruchni's degree. But the body will be left out on a regular Shabbos and Yom Tov. So now after this, we come back to Shavuos, where we now understand what the great accomplishment of Shavuos is when we say that even a person found in such a state of lack of appetite and his body is no keli for the holiness of a Shabbos and Yom Tov, the Torah says that he should eat as well. Based on this, we can understand the difference between Shavuos and every other Yom Tov and Shabbos. So here, the Rebbe first explains what was accomplished by Hashem giving us the Torah. The Chiddush in the Esgalus Elikis B'Shas Matan Torah, what is the novelty of the godly revelation that there was at the time of Matan Torah? Legabe, the andere Giluyim in the Moedim Uzmanim. In contrast to the godly revelations that there are in other time periods, is was bei Matan Torah hat es durchgenommen die ganze Brie. Here we're talking about a kind of revelation that penetrated every level and every layer of creation. Wie steht, as it says in the Medrash, as the Keil von Matan Torah hat sich gehört von alle Daled Ruchos Maila Mata. The sound of Hashem saying the Aseres HaDibris came from all four sides of the world and from above and below. Biz, and furthermore, we see the effect on every layer of creation. Biz a sipper leitzav achulu, a bird did not chirp, shar lega achulu, a cow didn't moo, ha'olam shaisik umachrish. The entire world stopped in its tracks, was completely quiet. Und noch mehr, furthermore, we see to what extent the world is penetrated through and through. Der Keil von der Aseres HaDibris is niklat geworden, a fille in dem Däumen vom Welt. The voice of Hashem saying Aseres HaDibris was completely absorbed even in the inanimate in the world. As this was once explained at length, as the Fad is nit gewen kein Baskel von dem Keil von Aseres HaDibris. This is why it says in the Medrash that by Matan Torah there was no echo of the sound of Hashem saying Aseres HaDibris, because an echo is produced by the voice rebounding when it hits the surface. But over here, the voice of Hashem penetrated every surface through and through, and therefore there's no echo. Und das, the Far, was bei Matan Torah is given, die Isgalos von Atzmus und Os allein. The reason is why it penetrates every single layer through and through is because here we're talking about a revelation of the very essence of Hashem himself. Was hat sich Kavayachal reingegeben in Torah. So to speak, Hashem invested himself in this Torah that he gives. Kamayim Chazal, as the Gemara says, that as the word Anoichi, the word Anoichi, the first word of the Aseres HaDibris, Hascholas Aseres HaDibris, Matan Torah, is Rashi Tevis, Ano Nafshi Ksovis Yehavis. Hashem says, I invest myself and write myself into the Torah. Anoichi Misha Anoichi. Atzmus Alein. The term Anoichi is no name, no aspect, no expression of who Hashem is, rather Hashem himself. Zogt as git Arain Ksovis Yehavis Zain Atzmus Nafshi in Torah. Hashem invests his very self into the Torah that he gives. That's the novelty that is in Matan Torah, different than the revelation on other Yom Tovim. As that is their bligvul amiti. So we're talking about the very essence of Hashem, which is the true limited existence, unlimited that is, the true infinite and unlimited existence. In other words, there are certain levels of bligvul, certain levels of revelation that express a certain aspect of bligvul, but the real, undefined and unlimited essence of existence is only Hashem himself. Is nitak kein ort vu seines Galas da langt nit. So therefore what that's expressed by is that there is no place, no level, no layer of existence that his truth is not there, is not expressed there. Was the Far hat Matan Torah durchgenommen die ganze Brie. So therefore Matan Torah penetrates every layer of creation. Even the very daimim itself, that doesn't have any aspect of expressing any truth, but it is the essence of truth which is there. It penetrates that as well. Und damit wird euch sein Move on der Tam, for was man tun und fasten kein Tainus Cholem b'Chag HaShavuos. With this we understand why one may not fast even a Tainus for a dream on Shavuos, the Far, but this is Yoim Shenitne by Torah. And as the Gemara says, this is the day that Hashem gives. Hashem gives fully himself and gives the Torah, and therefore you can't fast on this day. Yibal, das Chag HaShavuos is the Yoim Shenitne by Torah. Shavuos being the day that Hashem gave the Torah, was das hat durchgenommen die ganze Brie on kein Akbala. It penetrates every aspect of creation without any limitation. Darf euch die Simcha von Chag HaShavuos sein a bilti mugbelas. So therefore the joy of Shavuos is different in nature than the other Yom Tovim. It has to be an unlimited joy. Bez, as soll nicht sein, kein Ort by mention. There's no room by any person wo es der gleichen the Simcha von Matan Torah, where the joy of Shavuos does not reach. When it comes by andere Yom Tovim, when it comes to the other Yom Tovim, v'bald is eine verbunden mit eures v'giluyim, since those levels of revelation and a godly light that's revealed on those Yom Tovim, so can der Rebbe sein an Ort v'hester acholim. So therefore there's a room that there should be a blockage, there's a certain place, a certain level that doesn't express that truth of who Hashem is. was is menea verstellt auf the Simche von Yom Tov. So then you come to a certain stubborn place which is so low and so far that it will not express that greatness of Hashem. Aber the Simche von Teire is nicht Sheichen Hester. However, when you have the revelation of the Bligvul Amiti of Hashem Himself, which is unlimited, here there's nothing that can block this. Es nem durich ala madreges. This penetrates and is expressed on every level. Umetum afile in the madreges achi tachteines. Everywhere, even on the lowest level, one will sense how he's satisfied and he's accepting the Torah that Hashem gave him. And therefore this comes down, and this is expressed. Even a person that's in a world of dreams, where he's in a dream where he has opposites and his blockages in his life. In Achille, over there that he can eat, as Afille, wenn einer hat acholem was gewöhnlich, wollte es nicht gelost, als ein Guf soll kennen haben teinig machile. Even when one has this condition of a dream, meaning he's in a place where there's a huge gap between the experience of Ruchnius, of the Shabbos and the Yom Tov, and his body pulls him in a total opposite direction, so the Achille and the Shabbos and Yom Tov don't go together. So he looks at himself and says, my appetite is not there for Shabbos. I'm totally turned off. I have no connection to this at all. So on a regular Shabbos Yom Tov, what does Torah say? Yeah, the level of revelation on this Shabbos Yom Tov will not reach you, will not penetrate and transform and elevate your physical body. So Torah gives advice what to do in such a condition. At least celebrate and experience Shabbos Yom Tov on a ruchniziga level. But over here, though, on Shavuos, it's different. Shavuos, where it's the revelation of the very essence of Hashem, tut oif the simcha von Shavuos. What the joy of Shavuos accomplishes is, as oich by im verta simcha. When the Torah says that he should eat and drink, although he says, I have no appetite, what the Torah is really saying is that there in that condition where you say you have no appetite, the Torah reaches you and penetrates you as well, that you will experience joy there as well. Vabayim is noyach umekubel, because by him, even by such an individual, he is satisfied and is accepting the fact that it's yoyim shenitna by Torah, that this is the day that Hashem gave us the Torah.